Today's episode is with former teammate Nathan Abbey, who used to play for Luton, Chesterfield and Brentford as a goalkeeper. How's it going, bro? You okay?
Not too bad, Dan. Yourself?
Yeah, all good, man. Long time no see, no speak. How's things? How's life?
Yeah, surviving, Dan, like in this crazy world. It's like you just got to keep your head above water. Just give thanks every day, that you're... Some people don't live to see the next day, so sometimes you've got to just appreciate that, bro. How's tripped your end?
That's true. Say that again.
How's tripped your end?
Yeah, all good. As we said, we had a little chat off air and that, obviously just a brief catch up. So I'm working. I'm one of the lucky ones. I've been working kind of throughout the whole lockdown. Started a new job in September, and that was through my own choice as well. So still working in property, but I work for a software company now within the property field. So all good. I can't complain. Working from home, which is a new thing for me. So yeah, all good, all good. But obviously appreciate you coming on. Obviously, I know you're a busy guy and that, and we'll touch on that in a bit. But if you want to just let everyone know kind of what you're doing now in terms of kind of day to day.
Well, when I was still playing, I set up a company selling, basically brokering new cars, essentially. Just speaking to lads in dressing rooms, lads were getting, I'd say, raw deals without being savage. And I had a passion for cars, I was into my cars, and it was doing something with any job. You've got to enjoy doing it. And it's something that I had a passion for, something I enjoy doing. And obviously, to work for yourself as well, when you could try and grow your own situation, was something that I went with. And over the years, we've done obviously a lot of cars. We've dealt with a lot of players, managers, agents, in the fields of businesses, normal personal consumers. In the last 5-6 years, we took on a body shop as well. So we're kind of trying to make it a one-stop shop, so to speak. So whatever we sell you, we can also fix and obviously repair. So that's kind of the field that we're in. And, been in it 13 years now. Doesn't feel like 13 years. Some days it feels like 13 years, but you kind of, when you start, Dan, you put your life and soul into it, and you travel the length and breadth of the country. But as you build a reputation, then that calms down, and then you get staff that help you out with that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been a nice transition, because I kind of left football and went straight into it. But I've earned my stripes for doing the hard graft first, and it's like any business, you've got to graft every day to maintain and grow, and we're no different to anybody else.
That's massive, and I can vouch for kind of everything you said there. I've obviously had a couple cars from you, like back in the day. And one thing that I always remember about, obviously I know you anyway on a social level, played with each other anyway, but aside from that, in terms of like Enca Wheels, which is obviously the name of the company, it was always the service. And for me, it was just a case of, I would just call you or text you and say, look, looking for a car. Next question is, what are you looking for? And then I'd just say, look, I'm looking for this. This is my budget. And then within a couple of days, you've gone and sourced the cars. And it's one of those situations. I was in that situation there where I always want to like bring people in. So if I know someone who's got a hairdresser or something or whatever, I'll try and get them customers based on my experience. So I would always tell people, what it's like when you know someone who's, I don't know, they've got TVs or whatever, and it's genuine. You try and like bring other people in. So when I tell people, I know someone I used to play with, they can get cars and that, X, Y, and Z, and it's like genuine, obviously good deals and stuff. Some people look at it and hear it and think, is it going to be like what you're saying? It's like when you say to people, I know someone who can like get you cheap TVs or whatever it may be. It always sounds a bit dodgy. I know you've done a couple of bits of business with like friends I know and that, but it was always one of those situations where I always try and find you new customers, especially like early doors as well. So I always recommend anyone that I know who's looking for cars and stuff, I always like try and push them in your direction. But 13 years, that's a long time. And like you said, it doesn't really seem like 13 years. How did you go about it? Obviously playing football, and it's a completely different field now. So I knew full well you was interested in cars from when we were playing and stuff. But how did you kind of navigate that transition, and like how did you approach what you're doing now?
To be honest, Dan, I remember it quite clearly. I was at MK Dons at the time, who were my last pro club. And at the time, I was buying myself and a bird a car at Milton Keynes Audi across the road from the stadium. And I managed to negotiate a decent deal for both these cars. And at the time, who was the general sales manager, who I'm good friends with now over the years, he was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you just come in and negotiate us down to this kind of level on 2 brand new cars, so to speak." And he kind of said, "Look, you should get into this." And it kind of got me thinking of what actually do I want to do when I finish playing football? I suppose I probably wasn't clever enough at school, didn't study and work my thing. It was the old classic, I'm going to be a football player, and that's where all my focus went. But the flip side of that is never played at a level where I was ever going to retire on the money that I made. It would have been a good lifestyle whilst doing it, but it weren't retirement money. You know, I was fortunate to be involved in every level apart from the Premiership. But as everyone knows in the football world, you have to land that big contract at a high level to get that kind of put your feet up, cigar out kind of situation.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting at home thinking, do you know what? I spoke to a few lads and kind of, I think it was Dean Luton actually, who was at Enca Wheels. I orchestrated before I was set up his deal on his A5 at that time. And even he said, "No, if you should do this, like think about this and retire." And I was like, do you know what? That's what I'm going to do. And I went home and thought about it. And as daft as it sounds, it was probably the easiest transition I could have made. It was just a case of coming up with a name, starting up a company, and kind of just, like you said something earlier, which was critical, relying on people to put your name out there or put your name forward. I say 13 years, and there's so much I could have done better in 13 years. And when I look at some of the big players in the games like Amari Cars, Urban, Yanamai doing rap, I've been in the game just as long as a lot of these guys. I know Marlon Harewood does a little bit. So there's a few ex-players that do bits and a few people that have not obviously played the game doing bits. But I think when I look at the differences, what we tried to put on was an exclusive one-to-one service, because if you're coming to me to buy a car, the first questions you ask, especially on a new car, why would you not go to a main dealer? But you have to go through the process of using us, which you yourself has done, to realise the ease of it. You get what you say you get in, you get what you require, and we just do the job properly. And I think what we've found over the years, once we've dealt with a customer once, they just come to us year and year after year. What we've probably not done well is in those 13 years, we haven't advertised, which is good and bad, because advertising is growth and obviously gets you to where you want to be. But there's also nothing better than what I call just lip service of referrals. So our business is 100% over the years survived on referrals because we haven't advertised once. We're getting better, so now we'll throw things on social media, be it a car that we've repaired or a wrap that we've done or a car we've painted or a car we've sold or special deals that are out there currently, just to give the people understanding, look, there is ways around certain situations. And more importantly, we try to educate the good ways of buying a car. There's good and bad ways, and there's a lot of sharks out there. And especially when you go into the football subject, the younger football players kind of settling them down a little bit. You know, I dealt with a lot of football players where I've had them from young, and I look back and I think I've sold you like 15 cars, but I've always sold them cars with them in mind, knowing that I can't stitch them up in these cars. I have to say, look, this is possibly the wrong car for this. So what we've always done as well, I think we've been honest, and people have appreciated that, because you know how long it takes to build a reputation, but it takes minutes to lose one. So we've prided ourselves on just making sure we've done things properly, to be fair, Dan.
Yeah, that's massive. And again, what you're saying there in terms of like not really advertising, and a lot of your customers is based on kind of word of mouth, which is good. But what I would say, are you on LinkedIn? Because if not, I'd say get yourself on there, because that's a massive platform. I know everyone talks about social media, and the first things that spring to mind are like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, but LinkedIn's massive. So if you're not already on there, get yourself on there, because you'll get a lot of customers on there as well.
We're going through I call it a rebranding soon process that we're looking into in terms of turning the corner. I think the world for everything's gone internet driven, it's internet based, and whilst our work is up and down the country nationwide, sometimes even overseas, but predominantly in the UK, you also have to move with the times. And kind of I've had to take a bit of a self-evaluation even over this COVID period, what we're doing well, what we can do better, are we reaching out to enough people, do enough people understand what we do? Is the name right for the business in terms of silly things, Enca Wheels? People might think we just sell wheels. So we're looking at all different avenues now to obviously just make that next step that we've survived a pandemic like a lot of businesses have and some businesses haven't, but it's how we sustainability until I'm ready to hand over the reins or call it a day myself, you know. So I'm still young enough to get another 10, 15, 20 years out of what I do. But there's going to come a time where I want to sit back and watch somebody else take over and run, and probably better than I've done it in the future. So I've got to keep the momentum and the focus, I suppose, is the right word. It's easy to lose focus when you work for yourself because you rely on yourself. But when you have staff, your staff need paying, your bills need paying, then you've got to kind of recheck and make sure everything's, you know, all your ducks in a row and you're doing things properly.
Sure. And you mentioned earlier, you said about kind of your transition, you said it was pretty easy. Do you reckon it was kind of pretty easy based on the fact that you decided to retire on your own terms?
Yes and no. I remember it. I had left MK Dons, had a wicked time at MK Dons, probably one of the best clubs up there. We were very successful, had an unbelievable squad, really thoroughly enjoyed my time. And like a lot of players tell you, not on this occasion, not through any fault of my own, me and the manager at the time, they were saying we just didn't get on. And I had an opportunity to obviously get myself back into the team, and it was almost like he went behind my back and done a loan move, which kind of, you know, annoyed me to the point where I was said to the chairman, look, I've got to leave because I'm here to play football. I'm not getting any younger. And the chairman didn't realise that I was fit. He thought I was injured, etc. And it just got to a situation where it was too expensive for them to replace me than for me to stay there and ride out the season. And I ended up riding out the season. And I remember that when I left Brentford, I went to MK Dons, and before that, I think I might have been at Bristol City or Torquay. And I was kind of at my age done with travelling. I've always travelled, as you know, wherever I played. When we went to school at Boston, I used to travel over. And I just said, I'm done with travelling. I remember I took my mum shopping somewhere, and we drove past MK Stadium when it was being built. And I said, this is my final chapter. I have to finish here because I'd done Luton, and MK Dons was on my doorstep. It was 20 minutes from where I was living. And miraculously, I got a call from Paul Ince's agent. That's literally a week after I said to my mum saying, come and sign. And obviously, as I said, I'd done 2 years there, had a great time. But then the thought of getting back in my car and travelling, kind of, that side of it lost its mojo. And in the end, I decided to look back and I said to myself, if I can't get anything locally, what I might do is I was in a window where the business was now taken off. I was in my last year at MK Dons. And it was like, well, I've got 3 or 4 years left at a decent level of football within the pro game, or I slow the business down by 3 or 4 years, which is eventually going to be my future.
Yeah.
And I just made a decision that it was better to run with the business. And what I actually ended up doing is I went to Rushden under Justin Edinburgh, rest his soul, and we were full time, but he allowed me to train Monday, Friday, and then obviously do my business on the days that I was off or the afternoons that I was off. And then obviously when I left Rushden, I went to help Lee Harper out at Kettering, but I went on the same agreement, which was good because it allowed me to focus on the business. And then when I kind of was done with playing now, that's when I went to management with my brother to start off with. The level was then something I wasn't used to, but I was looking at that management prospect, I suppose, of, you know, starting a different football journey, but through a side that I didn't think I'd actually take on. But it kind of allowed me to have a balance of playing still, managing, doing my work. Nothing was affected. But I did, why I say it was good and bad, Dan, is because I had 2 or 3 years where I felt not angry, but I had a bit of a short fuse. And as I kind of fought and processed, it was generally because I come out of the game sooner than I should have. And you know yourself, as much as we sometimes moan about training, there's nothing like that match day buzz. It's impossible to replicate. You'll never replicate that training, match day, banter with the lads on the coach at the hotels. It's never the same. So it took me a couple of years to adjust to that. Now it's not a problem. But as I said, I know, speak to a lot of ex-pros, some of them are friends. It took them probably 2-3 years to discover what they wanted to do. which put them in a worse position, bless them. So I'm thankful that I was able to roll from one into another and also combine the two to then eventually let go and say, the career's over now, focus on something new. So it's been a blessing, but it's been a tough one at the same time.
Yeah, that's massive. And I mean, kind of, obviously you used to be a goalkeeper, and obviously a large part of that is communication. And obviously, especially with defenders, they need to gain the trust gain the trust of their goalkeeper being behind them and obviously instruct them to a certain degree. So I'll probably say communication is probably one of your strong points. But in terms of like other transferable skills, what have you taken from like your time playing for all these clubs whilst you're playing football to obviously doing what you're doing now?
To be fair, Dan, I think our time was disciplined. Yeah, it was we played in a disciplined era. I know in this era it's more sports science kind of orientated. They care about the body a little bit more. They supplement their bodies. They recover their bodies. But I think we had a different mentality. When I look at modern day football, and I say respectfully, some hell of a top class players, but I don't think they're bred like we were bred. I think we were the last of the tough generation. We got it tough, and I think football's evolved and changed a lot since then. And then what football done, it actually made me headstrong. So what I took was the headstrong values from the game. Sometimes when your manager was harsh here, unjust, but you just had to take it on the chin and be better, for want of a better word. I kind of took those strong-minded attributes from the game into business. And I was lucky because being a goalkeeper can be a lonely place and you have to be massively headstrong in those situations. You're going to have good days and bad days, and it's always easy from the stands. And if you haven't played in goal, sometimes you don't understand actually sometimes what is a mistake and what is not a mistake. But if you can deal with that as a goalkeeper, you'll have a long-lasting career because you bounce back easier. But also, there's going to be times in my business where it's tough. There's been times in my business where it's been tough, and tough times or slow times have hit. But it's how you keep your team focused and on the ball and keep yourself on the ball. So mental toughness is massive. I think that's massive in everything in society, in the world, in work, at home, in your relationship. The toughness side of it is what makes and breaks you. And I was fortunate that I just played in that mad position where if you weren't mentally tough, you were a goner, basically.
Yeah, and then so moving on slightly from that now. So in terms of your transition, and we've touched on that, and obviously mine, pretty smooth. But why do you think it's different for other people? Not everyone, but some. For the most part, most of them. And I'm talking all sports now, so not just football, kind of on a broader scale, so all sports across the world. Why do you think some people find it harder than others?
My personal belief is that I think all sports, all professional sports especially, we live in such a manufactured environment. We're manufactured to do things in a certain way, live our life in a certain way. We almost become robots. We're robots to the sport that we're playing. And when you become a robot and manufactured, you only know one thing. And although in the back of your mind, you might have that thing chirping away, is your pension in check? Have you been put into a pension? Have you got savings? What am I going to do when that career, whatever it is in sport, eventually comes to its sell-by date? What are you going to do? If you've not got that in check, it's because of the manufactured way of you was guided through the game. I think what didn't happen enough in our day, they didn't prepare us for life outside of sport, not just football, just sport in general, because you was a commodity at that time, and you was an important commodity to them. They weren't thinking about 10 years' time or 5 years' time. They were thinking about their organisation here and now, which I understand and totally respect. But when I look at agents, when I look at parents, when I look at the PFA who do a little bit more now, that's something that our generation probably didn't get that this generation's got. The other thing, in my opinion, is money. So the lads that had to graft for money, and I'll take it back to football. When you say you're a professional football player, people just think no. And the reality is, at some levels, say League Two, League One, even some championship clubs, a Sparky, a plumber would earn just as good money as a football player. The difference is the football player is doing something that most men across the world would like to do. But they're grafting for it in terms of the little bit of money they're earning being a pro. They're grafting for that new contract, where the lads that have gone through the same process, you can't knock that, but are at higher clubs or better paid clubs that have just got money coming in left, right and centre, then I can see why it's predominantly what I see. The ones that have had the money are the ones that are struggling to recoup in life, because at the end of the day, the ones that were getting the average dough, you can go out into society and earn the average dough. And what I see, you know, obviously would never obviously divulge, but we get a good insight sometimes in selling cars like young pros or young pros doing well. You look at some of the contracts then, because you have to get them for finance reasons. Whilst I keep it confidential, it blows my mind that, you know, they're being fed so soon, because, you know, it's like, Dan, if you turn pro at 17, 18 and you get to 23, you might have a chance in the game. But if you get into 24s and 25 and then you're out of the game, that's a big turnaround, because you're still young enough to be in it, but all of a sudden that breadline is gone. And unfortunately in football or in other sports where they're well paid, if you work in whatever industry and at the end of the month you've got enough money to buy a t-shirt, as that income stream comes up, next month you've got enough money to buy a pair of trainers, and so on and so forth. So what happens is, as quick as you're earning it, you get used to spending it, which is kind of not living to your means, but living to your means at that time. But the hardest adjustment is then, actually, I'm now getting a tuppence. How do I survive on the tuppence? And that's when the problems arise. The mental health kicks in. You know, people don't know where to turn. They don't know where to go, because they just can't replicate that once upon a time good dough that they were earning in all sports. Because I keep saying to people, it's not just footballers that earn good dough. There's many sports out there where it actually surpasses football, but that is the reality, in my opinion. That's just my opinion from what I see on a day-to-day basis.
100%. You make some good points there. And just like moving on from that, like leading on from what you're saying. So with that, do you reckon like retirement should be approached in a different way? So especially in our day, whenever someone spoke about or broached the conversation or subject on retirement, for me, it was always like, I don't really want to think about it. Like, I'm 23, 24, or even if I was 27, it's like, I'm fit. I was always kind of someone who was fit within the team and whatever. I'm mentally stable. I'm not really thinking about retirement. Although I know at that age, especially kind of late 20s, I knew that I'd have to work afterwards, but I was prepared to do it. So my mindset was, I've got friends who are my age, are running their own business, or they will be in 5, 10 years or whatever. I can always ask them for some apprenticeship work or whatever. That was my mindset. I was happy to do that. Not saying I was happy to do anything, because I wasn't happy to do anything, I'll be honest. But I always knew that I could use that, or use my friends, not use as in a negative way, but capitalize on their knowledge in a different field to help myself going forward. So I always had that within my mindset, and I think that helped me when it came to transitioning. Although I didn't have to go down that route, but I was always willing to do that. So for me, when I was playing, it was always a bit of a negative conversation. It carried negative conversations with it. Obviously, we touched on the PFA, and whenever they came in to speak to us, it was always a bit of a kind of negative vibe around the dressing room when they were about. And that's nothing against them. It's just their approach. And obviously, when they're coming in and you're 18, 19, and you're kind of starting out your career, you don't really want to be thinking about retirement, especially if you're playing well and the management are telling you you're playing well. You're thinking in your head, you've got a chance of making it. And that's just natural. So obviously now there's more conversations. People are kind of starting a podcast and whatever, speaking about mindfulness and like transitioning and mental health and things. So the conversations are more prevalent nowadays, and there's more awareness. So I think approach in terms of retirement may be slightly different, but we still hear these stories where people are struggling to transition, talking about loss of identity and things like that. So what are your thoughts on kind of approaching retirement? And I'm talking about younger players, so 18, 19, even below that, and mid-age, and then obviously latterly towards the end of your career.
And I think it runs a bit deeper than that, to be honest. I think I was having a conversation with my lad, and he went through Luton Academy, same as I did. And as a dad watching your child kind of following your footsteps, so to speak, I always just looked at him and thought, he's not quite good enough. He's not quite ready. I knew how savage the environment was. And he went through right until he was a YT to go into the building. And they kind of offered him an extended kind of schoolboy, which I was like, absolutely not, because at that time I was older and wiser. I was at the top end of my career where I've done my years. I know what the game's about. And I always said, like, I think we put so much focus into kids going to school, kids going to college, kids going to uni. I think the stats of actually when these kids, football's the same relative, when they get to 18, 19, the same as they get to 18, 19 in uni, the stats of actually them going into work for all those years invested is actually alarming. And I think that's the starting point of where we are. I think it's almost like, I know it sounds ridiculous, you almost need to be forced to, whilst you're coming through the ranks in football, go and have to do an apprenticeship. They get enough time now. You know, they've got Monday to Friday, and I think two of those days or 2 afternoons, they should be kind of getting qualified skill base at the same speed as they're learning the game. A couple of afternoons here and there throughout a calendar week is not going to make their ability going forward in the game suffer. That's my opinion. But what it's going to do is they're going to come out of the other side with a skill, not for qualification. A qualification and a skill are 2 different ball games. If I can go and plumb up that plumbing situation now without reading a manual, then I'm useful to somebody. If I've got to shadow somebody and say, look, this is what you need to do, you become less useful in a savage environment where it's about people making money. Sometimes businesses don't have time to babysit youngsters. And I think you touched on it when you was 18. I remember when I was 18, 17, and the old pros all the time, enjoy it because they're going to blink an eye. And I genuinely used to think to myself, what are you talking about? I'm 17 or I'm 18. I've got all the time in the world. But until you actually go through it and you start looking back and going, Jesus, where's this time going? You're nearly touching 30. And then I think it's then a little bit too late because you're trying to chase that £1 million deal or that life-changing, retirement deal. So you can then put a bit more focus into football and less focus into the time after football. So as much as you know, in our day, they used to send us to college, but the facts are, did we actually pay attention and come out with anything useful in college? No. We went there as a tick box exercise. And I think life is now about being hands-on, being physical. My kids now, and I've got a little one, she's 12 now, I'd have no problem if she didn't want to go to college and she didn't want to go to uni and she wanted to go and work for somebody and work her way up a ladder in a field that she enjoyed, because by the time her friends and peers come out of college and uni in the same way out of football, she's going to be so much more advanced, pay, leadership qualities, understanding business qualities, where they're just starting when they come out of uni. So, as I said, I think it cuts a little bit deeper than just football transition. I think it's a worldwide transition because, unfortunately, even to buy a house, as you know now, is, a joke, like in itself. And where the house prices are, especially down the south, it's almost impossible unless you've got, savings that are beyond what you actually physically can save. A 22-year-old can't save 50 grand. It's impossible. That can only come with inheritance or hand-me-down or help. So even that needs to be taught at school, that actually, if that's how we're living, we need to get these kids out working, and then they can earn the money to go. So when the kid's 18 football, and now I'm mixing the two together, the kid now gets knocked out of football, doesn't get that club. What you know, Dan, as well as I do, when that kid at 18 doesn't get a pro or doesn't get an extended schoolboy, whatever it may be, they go and circulate every football club in the land looking for that deal, rather than planting themselves, even at a non-league club, if they're a striker, just going and banging goals after goals, you'll always get back in the game. But if that didn't happen, they can go out and be a registered electrician, a plumber, bricklayer, whatever it is, something hands-on that they can offer society, which in then turns sorts themselves out. And then as a result of it, because they've done it so young, what the natural mindset is, if I've been bricklaying since I was 18, 19, 20, by the time I get to 25, 26, 27, I'm thinking about starting my own company because I've had my experience. I now know what I'm doing. Now I just need an understanding of how to go to the market and actually work for myself with a team of people. And that's the help that these kids, I believe, need moving forward, because outside of that, they're all chasing a small percentage dream. While they're chasing that small percentage dream, I think it's a 2% of the male population, might be less than that, become football players. So while that 2% scrambling over whatever food's in the food chain, there's 98% of men going to work as young boys, turning into young adults, get surpassing them and taking what these guys don't have. And until that change, it's going to be that vicious circle then. Otherwise, you've got to come from a well-off background, which a lot of people don't.
Definitely, 100%. And I kind of agree with everything you mentioned there. And I've mentioned them before on the podcast as well. So again, it's a tough subject matter. And again, it's not an easy overnight fix either. I always think about like the American collegiate system and think like, why can't that be implemented over here? I'm not saying it's going to be an easy thing to do, but if you look at America, obviously, if you want to be an athlete, whatever it may be, whether it be baseball, I don't know, football, whatever, you need to go to college and get those qualifications first. And I know what you're saying about obviously going to uni and college and stuff. And I always say the same thing to my kids. On day one, pointless sending you guys to uni and college just to say that you're going to uni and college because it sounds good. If you're not doing it for a purpose, it's got to be a situation where you need X, Y, and Z qualifications because you want to be X, Y, and Z when you leave. Not just go in there to then come out and think, okay, well, I've got this now, but I don't know what I'm going to do. And then you end up doing something which doesn't even align with your qualification anyway. Yeah. So I see a lot of people now. I've worked with people before. When I obviously initially stopped playing, I went straight into like an estate agents within the property industry. I was working with people who had degrees in that, and I'm thinking, hold on, I'm working here, I'm doing the same thing as you, and you've got a degree that you've worked for over a period of 3-4 years, whatever, and you're working here. It just didn't make sense to me. Yeah. So, yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying there. In terms of football, do you miss playing at all?
I do miss playing. Especially when you watch games of what your level was. I always keep it 100. Prem is the Prem. Top end of championship. But when you get into the nitty gritty, you miss that. As I said earlier in the conversation, the match day buzz is something you can't replicate. I could easily park up training. I trained hard, but training weren't something that I massively enjoyed. But I just trained hard because that's what you have to do. But a match day, I was like a different animal. It's the same when I went into management, and it was a buzz in a different way because you're now having to be calm, have a buzz, be tactically aware when you score a goal. Make sure that actually we've got the lead. We can't concede. We're not here to draw. So your brain was always active. So I felt the same kind of adrenaline rush and the same kind of ups and downs as when I did when I was playing. So that was the closest replication to miss a game. And I think that's also helped me because it's kept me within the game, even at grassroots level. It's kept me within. You take a kind of professional mindset into a non-league background, which goes both ways. But sometimes on a non-league circuit, as you're probably aware, they just want to play 5-0s, but you want to give them some professional structure because you will have some young kids that actually are good enough to get to a decent level of football. Yeah. So you've got to try and get a balance. So missing a game in terms of me going out there and playing, and sometimes somebody might put up an old clip of a save that you made or a game that you played, and it'll bring back those memories. And when you've played in so many games, you forget some of the games that you actually played in. So sometimes it's nice to look back. I'm not one to dwell. And I see sometimes lads put up a load of posts of like their games they played 10, 15 years ago, because I get it. It's not for me, but I get it because it's just a natural miss of something that they can never reproduce. They can never reproduce that, so they have to look back, which is a good thing. And I think, again, we're off that raw generation because there was no Instagram, there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook in our day. So us coming across clips and those things, unless you're getting your VHS out to try and dial back and rewind and pause to find where you've done something, it's kind of, that's where we got the raw deal on that side of thing. But as I said, I just missed the match day buzz and that feeling of winning games. It was about winning. It wasn't about losing. Let's keep it 100. Winning games and taking home your losses with you, and taking home good performances on a loss, good performances on a win, and just trying to be better. You know, you was accountable for yourself. That's the one thing football does give you. You're a team game, but it was highlighted when you was off your game. So you can't replicate it. I try to explain it to my mates who play football down the park, or sometimes I'll have a knockabout of them. I can't ever explain what it felt like because it's something you can't explain. It's like us being at Boston. You can't explain what it was like to be at Boston. You had to be at Boston under them crazy situations. To, as much as you look back on it, it was funny and we had a great time. It was crazy. And people would think we're lying when we tell our stories, but it was factually stuff that happened. But even that type day, as crazy as that was, I miss them days because you'll never get them back. You'll never replicate them.
Yeah, 100%. And again, good times as well. Never get them back. But just want to touch on your career briefly. So you obviously played for, I think Luton was your first club, and you made your debut there. What age were you, and kind of how was it?
I think I was 17, 8 when I made my debut. I think I played in the Littlewood. I would have been called Coca-Cola Cup then, against Colchester. And then I remember maybe 6, 7 months later making my away debut at Burnley away. And then I was at the club since '94. And I remember I used to, there was a good few goalkeepers there at the time. And I'd always travel from a young age from the first team. I'd always be on the bench, or when it was 3 subs back then, be the 14th man or 15th man, whatever you want to call it. So I was always around the first team environment, even when I weren't playing, which was obviously nice for me. And I think that also gave me the hunger to get into the first team. And I remember that one year I just was getting nowhere near. Kelvin was flying. I thought, I need to take on something different and try something else. And I went abroad. I went to Belgium to play in their Premier League. And it was pre-season at the time, and I'd done most of pre-season there. It was all looking good. I was enjoying the lifestyle. It was different. I was flying home every weekend because it was easy. It was only a 15-minute flight. And I remember Kelvin Davis got sold to Wimbledon back then. And I remember speaking to Lenny Lawrence, and he was like, if you can get back, then obviously the shirt's kind of yours. And I managed somehow to get out of my deal in Belgium and get a little bit paid up and come home. And then I kind of played my first season for Luton, and I must have been probably in my 19s, 20s. I was young. For me, it was a terrible season in my head mentally, because being young, being a goalkeeper, I made mistakes along the way there. But then in reality, I remember at the end of that season, I remember getting dropped. I had an absolute, when I say a stinker, I mean like a terrible time. I don't ever tell this story because it wasn't me to duck a performance. I weren't that kind of character. And I remember I was injured for all week. And I remember saying to manager at the time, I can't play, it's impossible. And they almost forced me to play. And I was too young and naive to say no. And I had a stinker. Plain and simple. I mean, we're getting booed off. And that Kenilworth Road, it's not the place to get booed off on that tight stadium. Your own fans have been, you weren't nice. And I got dropped for the next game. And the manager didn't even come out and protect me in the press, say, well, the lad was injured. He kind of put the heat on me, which was cool. I even come out and apologised, I said, not good enough, because that was my nature. That's how I was manufactured. That's how I was bred. And I remember being like really annoyed in the summer. It was my goalkeeping coach at the time, Malcolm Webber, said, what's the problem? He said, you've just played 40 back-to-back games in your first season. You know, that's 6 games short of the 46 league games. How can you be annoyed? And it took him saying that to me for me to go, actually, you're right. Yeah, you're right. So the next season, I come back a different person. You know, when you're a goalkeeper, my strength was always taking crosses down. I'd come anywhere for a cross. I was blessed with a spring and agility, so it wouldn't faze me to come and take a cross on the 18-yard line. Doing that in the reserve team and in the youth team, it's cool. But when it goes wrong at first team level, it's a goal. So you kind of, as you make mistakes, you kind of now start creeping on your line, and you get a bit of a reputation that you don't come for crosses. And actually, going back to the mental side, what was my strength at that period became my weakness, because I didn't want to come out and make a mistake. And I had to shift my mentality and go, do you know what? You've got to make a mistake. It's the nature of your position. If you feel you can go and get the cross, go and get it. And for every good cross you took, you had to remember why. When you look at your back four and they're like, cheers, Nath, you just got us out of our jail there. That's why you then have to stick to your own remit. And I followed that ethos right away through my career. And I look at my career and I say I didn't have an easy career. I had a resilient career where I just had to keep plugging away. That season, I left after playing about another, I think I played 80 games at Luton, something around that mark. And then I went to Chesterfield and I had an unbelievable first season there. Literally played every single game, which weren't heard of in that time. But I took that little early lesson that I had to Chesterfield, and it just made my transition into being a full-time pro now and an established pro. And now I'm at, for example, 100 plus games in those 3 seasons. It just made that so much more easy for me when I went to club or wherever it was. I just took Nathan Abbey as Nathan Abbey was, and you took me for how I was, a bit unorthodox at times, but got the job done my way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And obviously you went from there, you played for loads of clubs and had a long, successful career. And then you said kind of towards the end, you had some experience in management, so managing a team. So how did you see things from like a different perspective?
You know what, my brother was, as you know, my brother's a football player, and he went through uni into the game, and then didn't use his qualification like we spoke about earlier when he came out of football. But he was managing a side called Olsey at the time, and he'd been saying to me a few years, come over, just come and play and come on the management coaching side. I was like, not really feeling it. Then I'd done it, and it was all right. It was kind of, the biggest thing was adjusting to their mentality or their wavelength, because I'm still in pro mode here and going nuts and all that. And at the time, I'm still playing. So I'm doing a bit of both. And I can't understand why they're making these decisions. But you quickly learn that you have to play within your circumstance. I quickly learned myself that at the minute, I'm as good as you guys because I'm playing alongside you guys out of choice. Yeah, be it out of choice, not out of choice. So we're at the same level. So I then have to adapt my thinking rather than trying to get them to my thinking. I'll adapt to compensate for what you're going to do or how you do things. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. As time went on, we stayed there. Then we left to go to St. Neots, which we were extremely successful in our short window there. Then lost the job through politics. I mean, we were at the time, I think we were second in the league, game in hand, unbeaten in 14, and we got sacked. So you work that out, but that's football. Nothing surprised me in football, so no love lost in that situation. I went out and helped another team for a short window, and then we went back to Olsey, funny enough. We went back to Olsey, and then eventually my brother had a kid and couldn't commit, so then I took on the responsibility of the job full time. So then me and my brother are the same, you think the same pretty much, but then when it's just yourself, on a Friday, on a match day, there's no deliberation of what should we do, how should we line up. You're making those sole decisions for the first time solely on your own, if that makes sense, which is a big challenge. And then I've done that for a year and a bit, and then went to Bedford, which was closer to home. Went there as assistant manager to a lovely fellow, John Taylor, and then eventually got the job. And then I stepped down just before COVID, to be fair.
Okay.
Stepped down, just mainly the prima donna of where we were kind of takes its toll in respect of trying to get these guys. When you've worked with a group of players for a long period, they know your standards and they kind of stay in their lane. You move to these clubs, and Bedford's a big club, but I know it's a big club. It's got a big club with ex-players who are better than they are, but again, like I said, not respecting the level that they're playing at. And it just got to a point where I was just like, I need a break from football myself. I needed a break. Hadn't had a break since '94, and obviously doing the business, sometimes leaving work and going straight to a game or going straight to training. And I was just like, no, I need to take a step back and just reevaluate. Still love the game, still will manage, still will go back into the game when the right job comes up. But I needed that break for myself because 1994, and we was in 2020 at the time. I think I was almost burnt out from football. And then bought a house and then started doing building work at the house, which is still ongoing. So I kind of used that time of lockdown to say, well, I'm going to build my house, get that right. Then by the time we get back round to the summer, work settled, hopefully normal life, COVID life is settled, and then I can think about then going back. I'm fresh again and hungry again and, you know, waiting for that opportunity. So good that to stay in the game. I always say, I was on a Zoom call actually with a few lads that have been all good pros. Some of them played the highest level, don't need to mention names. But it was nice that when I looked and spoke to them, a lot of them were still in the game in some capacity, whether it be agency, physios, coaching staff, you know, they were all punditries. So when you look at it, I think to myself, all you guys have had good careers, average careers, but you've all stayed within the game. You're all humble guys, same generation, same circle of friends. But I think that's the thing with football, it almost grabs you and keeps you in the game in some form of capacity that you can't release. So no matter what you do within your life, you're still affiliated to the game. And I think that's what football does to you. And some people just play it for football and they hate football, they just play it as a job. And some people just have that natural old school love of the game, which still definitely exists.
100%. And just going back like slightly now, so again, you obviously run a successful car company. Did you get any help? So when it came to, I know you was like kind of toying with it whilst you were coming to the end of your career and stuff, but did you get any help from any organisations, anyone else, like family or like people who were already doing what you're doing now? Did you reach out to anyone reach out to you to help at all? Or?
No, to be fair, Dan, again, I go through to my upbringing, to being a goalkeeper. I'm kind of mentally tough, and I kind of, if I'm doing something, if I say anyone around me, if I say I'm doing it, it means I'm doing it. Don't mean it's going to work, but it means I'm going to do it. I'm going to give it a shot. It was something that I said I'm doing. It cost me 250 quid setting it up, getting your domain names, usual stuff, and then the rest just then falls into place. And as you start moving, right, you need a proper bank account. Then as you start moving, you need an accountant to do your books, and so on and so forth. So then you get to the point, oh, you need premises, but it's almost like it just kind of fell into place and you just kind of ran with the next step, the next progression of what it is, what you were doing. And I'm no different to anybody else. Yes, there's people out there that can help you and steer you and guide you, but I think like life, it's a life lesson. Whatever mistakes I make in the business is going to help me to make it better next time around, or when that next situation turns itself around. So I kind of just believed in myself in terms of saying, well, you're going to learn things along the way, you're going to mess things up along the way, but as long as the good outweighs the bad, you'll eventually get it so it's seamless and it just runs effortlessly. So it's not set up a business like, is not as hard as people may think it is. And that's one thing to look at youngsters, even grown men. I encourage, if you've got something that you feel will work, then run with it. Because I look at business, if you can supply something to the market that the market always is going to need, you've got a chance. If you're a hairdresser, someone's hair is always going to need cutting. That's the facts. It's as simple as that. Yeah, people have cut their own hair out of lockdown, but I can guarantee you the barbers and the hairdressers around now, with people getting you know, hairdos and sorting themselves out, because that's business. Business is moving with the times and providing the market something that they can't go without. You look at all these entrepreneurs now, people are making money, Dan, from doing absolutely things that we wouldn't even dream or think about doing. We've got influencers that are killing the market. You know, you've got kids, you know, reviewing toys. There's something there for everyone. You know, as daft as it sounds, but some of these youngsters are earning more money than grown men, and some of them are like not even out of nappies, in layman's terms. So when I look at transition, I think it's easier to transition in business in this era than it was for the older pros. So the pros that we looked up to as senior pros, they would have had all this ease of going into business. To be in business, you had to have been going at a long, long time, and you would have had to go through the ranks, where you can set up a business out of nothing. And I look at people like Marvin, Fresh Kids, you look and go, a small situation where you just went, boof, yeah, I want to do that. And then look now, massive. And rightly so. And yes, along the way, the hard work's never at the start. It's in the middle point and drawing, keeping it, growing, expanding at the right time. You can grow too big before your time. You know, I've got friends who are scaffolders, and one of them 2 years ago went on his own, and I've been saying to him for ages, you know what you're doing, go out and do it. You're only earning someone else's money. Yeah, you're taking your guaranteed money home. It's the risk factor that people don't like. You're either employed. Employed sounds better than self-employed. But the facts are, if you're in the right self-employed business that you set up, you'll earn more money. That's the facts. And you'll get more opportunity.
Definitely. Do you think more help's needed for like athletes? Obviously, if you want to just concentrate on football, that's entirely up to you. That's fine, because obviously we both used to play. But I'm talking kind of football, kind of on a wholehearted basis, generically, any sport. Do you think more help's needed for athletes when it's coming towards transition, or before, whatever it may be, just transitioning in general? Do you think more help's needed?
Yeah, I think you do, and it's a hard one, because I think, as I said, athletes and sports individuals they're almost in the same environment, just doing a different sport. The difference is, obviously, we can relate to football because we know we had a union. And for me, I would be the first to say, I think our union is one of the best unions within a sporting environment. Could they do more? Of course they could do more. They could do a hell of a lot more, because what happens in these big organisations, and it's the same as the FA, you have what I call old school guys that have ran it well for years, but there becomes a shelf life. Not that they've done a bad job, but fresh blood has to come through, okay? I'm not even getting into what colour they should be or not be. Couldn't care, Dan, in that respect. But the youthful now live in the times have to come through and shift the mentality to say, actually, this is what we need now, and this is the reason why. You look at women's football, we've been so focused on getting women's football out there. We're so focused on getting women commentaries onto our screens, and we can look at it and go, it's equal opportunities, rightly so. We have to look at all avenues, and that's one that's recently I look at being heavily pushed. I look at recently, and I just touched on race slightly, we're not going to go there, but at the minute, getting ethnic background people into not just football, but all these higher paid jobs or more prestigious roles, it's been heavily pushed. And again, rightly so. But when I look at what you just said, and I think to myself, well, whose job is it to transition a human being, an individual, to be ready for life after football? Does that stop at mum and dad? Questionable, okay? Does that stop at football club? Possibly not, because that kid might have 2 or 3 football clubs. They all can't do it. One of them can advise. Does that stop at the union? Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Why? The union's got a lot of money. Why? Because you do have to listen to the PFA. The PFA can come in and speak to you. They can't force you. I get that. But I look at it as pros, we can't look after our left shoulder and go, well, we didn't ever get the help or support. We could probably say that from our era. In this modern day, I don't think that they can say that, because they would have had that meeting, they would have had that PFA rep going in and spending time with them. I've seen it, people like Leon McKenzie, okay, who obviously very strong on mental health and etc. I've seen him going into the clubs, but I don't think there's enough of that. And what it takes is real people that have been in the game, that these youngsters can relate to. It's not just somebody coming and telling them with a tie that this is what they have to do. Going into things, this is what I've done. I was in your situation. This is what I thought about. This is where I am now. Where I am now depends on how good or bad your business is. But what my point is, my business could be brilliant or it could be terrible. But the fact is, if it's turning me an income in that my family can live off, then that's okay for me. Some people want more, no problem at all. But that is the transition we're talking about. How do you move from A to B when all you ever know is A? You've not even given B a second thought. So I think it's a mixture of union, it's a mixture of individual, but I think the union have to hammer it in so hard that it almost becomes no choice. What I would say, as I said before, at YT level, forget all this college nonsense, send them, as I said earlier, get them a skill. Let them choose a skill, because when we went to school, we had to choose. I mean, I seen an email come the other day from my daughter. She's in year 7. She's 12. She's now got to choose her subjects. And I'm like, I haven't had a chat with her, I've only seen the email today, but I'm like, I've already said to her, make sure you do a language, because I think that's massive. We'll go like Europe, and most of us can't speak a word of the country we go into, but we expect them to speak fluent English, and we're miffed if they don't. I'm like, we're in a different country, getting mad because they're not speaking our language. But the beauty of it is they do speak our language. But then us as English people, we don't speak any other language 9 times out of 10, because you learn it at school, park it up, and it's never to be needed, because they've made it so easy for us to communicate. Well, I said to my daughter, pick a language, whatever you feel, and take it as far as you can go, because that will see you into the future. It might see you in overseas work you didn't think about, but you've got something under your sleeve that a lot of people won't have. Yeah. But going back to the point of, when I say forced, we didn't know what we want to be outside of, what you would have said you'd want to be before you knew you wanted to be a football player. I said I want to be a carpenter, but I had that in my head because I had carpenter because I wasn't an educational guy. School wasn't for me. I attended school, but it weren't for me, so I needed to be hands-on. So if I weren't a football player, I probably would have been a carpenter, because that's what I would have followed. But when you hear these kids, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a vet, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an influencer, we have to go, actually, how realistic is that to the child? And if they're not going to be a nurse, a doctor, an influencer, a vet, a lawyer, can we give them a skill that they can be and they can do something with? Because at the minute, the construction industry is crazy. You can't get anyone in construction for love nor money. They are so stacked with work. It's the population is growing, which means construction is growing. So it's a great field to be in. Be it a sparky, be it a bricklayer, be it a plumber, you're always going to have work. If you're good at what you do, Dan, you'll get work, because there's a demand out there for us that don't know how to plumb up the sink or fix the electric because the fuse is gone. And that's what I think we really need to focus on. The PFA really need to be sending people out to these clubs. And as I said, not just themselves, people that have been there, done it. I mentioned a few names. They were just random names. But I just think the kids look and go, okay, he's played the game. How many times did you sit and pay attention when a PFA guy come in?
Yeah, hardly ever. And I've said before, purely because I couldn't really relate to him.
Yeah.
There was someone coming in and they said, look, I used to play and I played at whatever level, whether it be League One, non-league, whatever, and now I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Then it's more relatable, it's more tangible, purely because they've been there and done it, and now I can learn from their experiences. Not dismissing the people that came in, just because they didn't play football. Because some of them, I think a couple of them did actually play football, but it was just, I think the delivery was wrong for me anyway. It didn't grab my attention enough. I didn't dismiss it, but it just didn't grab my attention enough. But yeah,
what's massive in that, we say this, what's massive in that is that what nobody's respected, and I look at my 12-year-old, the things that she says, not in a disrespectful way, but the things that she said and how they speak and how advanced they are way more beyond what we were. And it's no different to these young pros now. Their mindset is totally different. And that's why I say to you, youthful situations or just left the game doing something are the people that should be going in. Let's not scratch the surface. Let's go in and actually put it on the line. Also send in the people that didn't come out the other side. Reach out to the people that didn't come out the other side. It's not all rosy, Dan. It's not all that story. That's make-believe. People have gone through hardship to come out the other side. I would relate to that story like that. Well, Matey Boy was on his knees and he dragged himself out. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get more people off their knees to stand them on their feet, and we've only got a fraction of people to take off the knees. At the minute, it's the wrong way round, and we've got to stop scratching. We lots of what you do here, people will tune into it, Dan, or they won't tune into it. But myself, I've known you, we haven't spoken for a little while, to be fair, but it's popped up on my feed, and I've enjoyed seeing what other people have done and how they've made their own different transitions just out of curiosity. I sit back and go, well, I'm all right. I like to see, because there's a time when I might have to speak to somebody else. I can use that as a reference point and say, Jim down the road, he did this, man. Have you thought about doing that? Because we have to be also open-minded. It's okay being headstrong, but we're not all built that way.
100%. Defo makes some amazing points there. Just want to let everyone know kind of obviously where we can find you on the socials, the name of your company, what you do there, and obviously where you're based and stuff.
Yeah, so we're based out of Bedfordshire, called Enca Wheels. We've got two divisions. We do obviously sales of new and used cars, pretty much all brokered. We work a little bit unique to a lot of the other dealers in terms of how they carry stock. We carry stock in a different way, where it's more source to order situation. On the body side of things, we do everything bodywork, from the smallest scratch to alloy wheels to full resprays. Because we're in a window now, Dan, where it's okay, we're selling a new car, but as we all suffered and all know, when them cars go back to the finance companies, they start hammering clients for fair wear and tear, silly things. So we're now in the process of educating probably our surrounding area and the people that we sell to, that when you get to that end of that contract side, there is a service that we will give you at a sensible rate, not a ridiculous rate, and definitely cheaper if you don't get it sorted. And we also advise you if it's going to be chargeable or not chargeable in our opinion. So we're out there. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook with the same name. We do put different bits and bobs. We're always a message away. Sometimes we had it recently where we sent a message out just giving people, if they wanted to talk around COVID, if they felt they were stressed by their car payments, was our way around it. And we had 4 or 5 ladies, to be fair, that were actually scared to talk, and kind of took the plunge to go, I'm going to message and see what they've got to say if they could help me. And we managed to help all 4 of them. One of them, the smallest one, was a £70 a month saving on the same car that she had. She didn't have to buy another car. Wow. So sometimes we'll go out to try, and also you've got to give back sometimes, Dan, and sometimes this industry that I'm in is a bit of it can be looked at as a harsh market where people are only out there to make money. We're a business, of course we want to make money, but there's a time out there where someone's on their knees, they don't know where to turn, and we can help reduce their costs with 10, 15 minutes work that doesn't cost anything. We don't need to charge for that. It's just about helping somebody out the other side, because the flip side of that is when they're back on their feet, they'll come back to somebody that was there for them, that they can trust, that didn't take advantage, and help them stand back up. So we do a mixture of everything, debt adjusting to go with financing. So it's not all about sell. We do have the licenses to debt adjust to help people out of tricky situations, or even balance themselves out a little bit better with a plan. there's different ways to finance, and sometimes we have to put you in the right program that suits you rather than the program that suits us.
That's amazing. Obviously, great to catch up. Really appreciate you coming on. Obviously, we'll keep in touch as much as possible going forward. And that's it, really. Just appreciate you coming on. Speak soon.
No, I appreciate it, Dan. Keep up the good work, bro. Nice to see you as well. God bless you.
See you later.
Thank you. All right, bye.